بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. So today our topic is about Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, who is a prophet of Islam, and we're going to do his story, inshallah. And you might be wondering why we're covering his story at this time. Actually, you can take three guesses why we're doing it right now. But many of us have grown up, myself included, with a culture of um, Prophet Isa alayhi salam, and with Christmas around us and people celebrating. And because we live in well, now practically everywhere in the world, even in Muslim countries, they are following these cultures of celebrating the Christmas, etc. But we know that we are not allowed to celebrate any festivals of any other religions, even to imitate them in any ways. So, one of the things that we have to learn, and the reason for this, especially about Christmas, is that they believe that Jesus was born on this day, Isa alayhi salam, who they call Jesus. And there's many names about Isa alayhi salam that are used in the Quran, but they believe that Isa alayhi salam was born on this day, 25th of December. And if you look at their own history, you'll find that they say that this is not the true date, and they don't really have a true date, but it was because they wanted to coincide it. There's a history. They wanted to coincide it with the winter solstice, which was a pagan um, festival, which the pagans celebrated, and because they wanted to coincide it with that, or the winter when everybody was off, and so they made this whole Christmas around it. So many of the rituals around Christmas, they have nothing to do with Isa alayhi salam, and it's very important for us to understand who Isa alayhi salam actually is, and we are more entitled to love Isa alayhi salam and to believe in him because he's mentioned several times in the Quran, and his story is mentioned as well in the Quran. And you probably um, have heard it many times over, but it's always nice to go back and refresh our memory about the story of Isa alayhi salam. And because Isa alayhi salam's story is not over yet, it's not finished. It started, and there's a big interval, and there's going to be an ending. So we are at the moment in the interval. The ending for Isa alayhi salam is yet to come. And we believe in that, the Muslims believe in that, the Christians believe in that, and the Jews believe in that. So we all believe, the revealed religions, we believe that there will be a second coming of Isa alayhi salam. And so to look at these details which are mentioned in the Quran is really important, and to have the correct belief about Isa alayhi salam, like who was Isa alayhi salam, what is his true nature. And he has nothing to do with being associated with Allah as they claim, i.e. that Na'udhu Billah is his son, or that he himself, Na'udhu Billah, is God, Na'udhu Billah. So there's many beliefs, wrong beliefs associated with Isa alayhi salam, and so it's important to have the correct belief of Prophet Isa alayhi salam. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So I'm going to read the story, and then we'll pause, and then we'll look at some reflections on the story. So the story is mentioned in a lot of detail in Surah Al-Ali Imran in the Quran, as you know, and it's mentioned, actually is one of the stories, like Yusuf al-Islam's story, that's mentioned in quite a bit of detail, and names are also there, and the family, the family of Imran, which Surah Al Imran is, that's what it translates as, has been dealt with in some detail. after Surah Al-Baqarah. So it's the history of the Christians, the original Christians who believed in Isa alayhi salam as a prophet, right? And there was a group, and there still are a group like that in the world today as well. They have come down who don't believe in Isa alayhi salam as a God at all. They don't believe in the Trinity, but they believe in Isa alayhi salam as a prophet. Now the story starts with Maryam alayhi salam. This is a mother of Isa alayhi salam, and so Maryam alayhi salam is actually a very important figure, and she is the only woman in the Quran mentioned with her name. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about her in very lofty terms. So it's important to know who Maryam alayhi salam is too. And so we start here, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Many years ago, within the community of the Israelites, that's Bani Israel, there lived a very pious and religious saint. And his name was Sayyidina Imran, and he had a wife called Sayyida Hannah alayhi salam. And they were both well respected amongst the people. Now, just a bit of history over here. When we say that from the community of the Bani Israel, these are all the children, the descendants of Musa alayhi salam. So these are the children actually of Yaqub alayhi salam, and he had 12 sons. So these are the children who came down from Yaqub alayhi salam. They're known as the Bani Israel. So from that line of people, it says that there was a very pious and religious saint, and his name was Imran, and he had a wife called Hannah, and they were both well respected amongst the people. However, to their sorrow, they had no children of their own. Sayyida Hannah alayhi salam longed very much for a child. She would regularly make dua and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant her a pious child. Allah, the merciful, answers the prayers of those who ask from him. Her prayers were also answered, and within a few days, she was expecting a child. Overcome with joy and happiness, she made a promise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the child will be given over for the service of the blessed Masjid al-Quds in Jerusalem. So al-Masjid, which is known as al-Masjid al-Aqsa. In those days, people would give their sons over for the service of the masjid. So this lady, Hannah, after a very long time, she becomes pregnant, and she's so overjoyed that she promises Allah that the child that she will bear, she will give it in the service of the masjid. And it was common in that time that people would give their sons into the service of the masjid. And what would happen is that these children, as soon as they were self-sufficient, they were able to look after themselves, they would be given to the masjid, and then these children would be brought up in the service of the masjid. So these children would grow up in the masjid, and they would look after the masjid, they'd clean it, they'd look after the pilgrims who'd come, and basically they were like the servants of the masjid. So Sayyidina Imran alayhi salam died just before his wife was due to give birth to their first child. So the father, he passed away, and Hannah gave birth to a girl whom she named Maryam, Mary. On seeing the baby girl, Hannah was sad, as she thought she would not be able to fulfill her promise. However, Hannah did not know that this girl was special, as Allah was going to bless her and grant her respect and honor. So when the child is born, and if you remember, Hannah alayhi salam had given a promise to Allah that this child was going to be dedicated to the masjid. But this child is born, and she sees that it's a girl, and she's disappointed because of her promise, because she says that the girl is not like the boy. You can't just leave a girl in the masjid. So she and this is mentioned in the Quran. And so she was consoled to say that, don't worry, Allah will take care of everything. So Hannah alayhi salam looked after the newly born child, whom she named Maryam, and she's is also Mary, and until she began eating food. Thereafter, she handed the young child over to the khadims who looked after al-Masjid al-Aqsa. Those are the people, the servants of Al-Aqsa. So the people, custodians rather of Masjid Al-Aqsa, the people who looked after the masjid, she handed the child over. When Maryam al-Islam was brought to Al-Masjid Al-Aqsa, each of the custodians wanted the honor of looking after her, as she was the child of Sayyidina Imran alayhi whom they knew as a very pious man, because they liked Imran al-Islam a lot and they knew that he was very pious. So they wanted to look after that child. They discussed amongst themselves as to who should be given the honor. Now, Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi was the head of the Khadims and also the Prophet of Allah. He insisted that since his wife was the aunt of Sayyidah Maryam, he had more right to look after her. After much discussion, they could not agree. So now there was a dispute because everybody wanted to look after this girl because they knew that she was blessed because her father was very blessed. And the head of the custodians, who was Zakaria alayhi salam, who was also a prophet, he said that he would like to look after this child, and he was more rightful of it because the child was also related to him through his wife, because his wife was the khala of Maryam alayhi salam. She was the aunt of Maryam alayhi salam. So he said he was more rightful. However, they didn't stop there because they couldn't agree, and so the discussion and the disagreement carried on. Finally, to put an end to the disagreement, Allah instructed the Khadims to go to a river with their pens. They used these pens to copy the Torah, the book revealed to Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam. On reaching the river, each Khadim was to throw his pen into the water. The person whose pen went against the flow of the river would be the guardian of the child. This was to be a miracle from Allah to show whom He had chosen to be the guardian of Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam. So because they couldn't agree, Allah told them that how to resolve this dispute. And so he inspired the Prophet to tell the people, those who were disagreeing, that they should take their pens, and these pens were sacred. They were thought to be sacred because they used to write the Torah with it, right, which was revealed to Musa alayhi salam. Now you can see from this, is a small point here, that even all the tools that you use for your learning the deen, for example, for your learning the Quran, they become sacred too, right? They become like your pens and your books and the place that you learn. That's why you should respect all of these things. You shouldn't put books on the floor, and even the pens that you write with, that you write your the Quran and Hadith with, you should respect those as well. So anyway, they took those pens, and it said that everybody throw their pens into the river, and whoever's pen would flow against the current, right? Because it's normal for the pens to flow with the water. That would be that's a normal law. However, whoever's pen flowed against, that would be the guardian of the child. That person would be chosen. So the Khadims followed the instruction of Allah, and the pen of Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam went against the flow of the river. And Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam became the guardian of Maryam alayhi salam, and she went to live with her aunt and Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam. So they threw their pens, and Zakaria alayhi salam's pen was chosen, right, because it went against the flow of the river. And so Maryam alayhi salam went to live with Zakaria alayhi salam and her aunt, and which was a logical solution for them as well, because they were related. But you can see the sunnah of Allah too here, that because they were disputing, Allah wanted to make it clear that the choice was His, and so He performed this miracle. This was a miracle that was performed in front of their eyes, so that they could see it as well. And so they could also see that this child was also a miracle. Maryam alayhi salam was a good person, and in their hearts there was more respect for her because of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had shown them. So Maryam alayhi salam grew up in the household of Zakaria alayhi salam, the prophet, and the aunt, and she grew up to be very pious and religious. And Zakaria alayhi salam gave her a special room which was connected to the masjid. She would worship Allah and read the Torah there all day long. At night, she would return to her aunt, um, and Sayyida Isha and Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam. So she would come back at night. Whenever Zakaria alayhi salam visited her during the day in that special room, he found her with food and drink and fresh fruits which were out of season. Puzzled and curious, he asked her, Maryam, from where did you get these fruits? From Allah, she answered. So Zakaria alayhi salam, sometimes he would go and check up on her in that room during the day, and he would find that there were out of season fruits that they hadn't given to her. And she would be sitting with a bowl of fruits, and there'd be drinks, and he would wonder where this food came from. And obviously, when you see something unusual, you ask about it. So she would say that this is from Allah. And Zakaria alayhi salam realized that no person can come here, so there's no way somebody can give her food, and this has to be a miracle from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so Zakaria alayhi salam saw this miracle, and he thought about it, he pondered on this. He was amazed by it because, first of all, he had seen the miracle in the river, and now he was seeing this miracle. And so he said, he thought to himself, if Allah can provide fruits out of season for Maryam, can He not bless me and my wife with a child in our old age? Thus he eagerly prayed to Allah, O my Lord, give me a pious child. Now there's something that is very beautiful here, and it's very layered in the Quran when you read the verses, because it says that Zakaria alayhi salam saw that the child Maryam, she was getting fruit, out of season fruit from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now they didn't have import exports then, and they didn't have fruit coming in from like islands and from near the equator where it was hot and here it was cold. It was nothing like that. So it was impossible for her to get this kind of food, exotic fruits and drinks. And so he pondered on it, and he knew it was a miracle. So he thought to himself that if Allah can provide out of season fruits to a child, then why couldn't he provide the Zakaria alayhi salam and his wife, who are now too old to have a child, right? So if you want to put it in that language, that their season had gone to have a child. But if Allah could provide fruit out of nowhere, then why couldn't He provide a child out of nowhere? And so he prayed to Allah, right? This inspired him to pray to Allah. He eagerly prayed to Allah that, oh Allah, give me a pious child. So you can see the connection between the two. And this is all mentioned in Surah Al Imran. So Allah sent angels to him with good news of a pious son. They said, Allah has accepted your prayer, and He gives you good news of a son. His name will be Yahya. He will be noble and pious. He will be a prophet of Allah. Now Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam said, O my Rabb, how can we have a son? I am very old and my wife cannot have children. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, it is easy for me. I do whatever I want. Thus Allah granted Sayyidina Zakaria alayhi salam a child in his old age, and Sayyidina Yahya alayhi salam, who was a cousin, who now is a cousin to Maryam alayhi salam, was born. So you can see that in their old age, Zakaria alayhi salam and his wife, they had a child. And you can see the connection of how Maryam alayhi salam's miracle was that she was getting out of season fruits. And this is the third miracle which is mentioned, which is that Zakaria alayhi salam and his wife, elderly wife, they have a child. And when the news comes, when an angel comes to Zakaria alayhi salam, he says that, how can I have a child when I'm old and my wife is barren? So the angel says that Allah says it's easy for me, I can do whatever I want. So Zakaria alayhi salam, at that time, he asked for a sign, and the angel says that you will not speak for 3 days. So this is a sign that was given to him. Anyway, she has the child, and that child, in relation to Maryam alayhi salam, is Maryam alayhi salam's cousin, right? So now remember, there's in this story there are several prophets bunched together. So first we've got Zakaria alayhi salam. He's a prophet. He's an elderly prophet of the time. Then he has a son who is Yahya alayhi salam, and then Isa alayhi salam is going to be born. So Yahya alayhi salam and Isa alayhi salam are going to be contemporaries, right? They're going to be children at the same time, right? Anyway, so Maryam alayhi salam's story continues. So here, this is, let's pause here for a few reflections. And one of the first ones is that what promise did Hannah alayhi salam make to Allah? So we can ask the question that, can we make a promise to Allah? Can we make, say, if we're very happy, can we make a promise? So first thing is that when we make a promise, then we have to think carefully before we make the promise, because if we break the promise, right, then we would have to pay a kafara for it. Means we have to give something for it. And why was Hannah alayhi salam sad when giving birth to a baby girl? Now we know that she was sad because not because the baby was a girl, but because she had dedicated the child to the masjid. Now for her it worked out, but because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had already accepted the girl. Now in here there's a lot of things in this tafsir too, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't just accept men, but he will accept the piety of a woman too. Like whatever a woman does that is dedicated to Allah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept it. Right? And then we know the story of what the custodians, what was their disagreement. So they were disagreeing because they all wanted the privilege of looking after Maryam alayhi salam, because they knew that they would get a lot of blessings in their life, in their personal life, if they looked after a blessed person. So we know from this too, we learn from this that when we do things for others, then the blessings flow into our life as well. So when we serve other people, then the blessings come to us first. This is why service to others is so important. The Prophet ﷺ, our Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, emphasized it so much that we need to give service to other people. Why? Because that service, the blessings of that service come back to us in this world, and then the reward we're going to get in the hereafter is going to be exceptional. Now, there's several miracles that we mentioned. The first miracle we mentioned in the story was about the flowing of the pens and how the guardian for Maryam alayhi salam was chosen. So you can see that this is a woman that is, Maryam alayhi salam has been mentioned in the Quran as a very pious and noble person. And we see in this story that right from the beginning, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking after her. So the first thing is that before she's even born, she's been dedicated to the masjid. That's one nobility. Then when she comes into the world, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts her for the service of the mosque, even though this is unusual because only boys were accepted at that time into the masjid for the service. And it wasn't usual to go and leave a girl there. Then he provides a perfect situation where her own aunt, right, the best person, who her mother's sister, is looking after her, right? So Zakaria alayhi salam and his wife are looking after her. So he's providing ideal circumstances for her to be brought up within a family, and still the pledge of the masjid can be fulfilled. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending her out of season food. So he's even providing food for her, right? If you think about it, she's in a cell-like room in the temple, right, in the masjid, and her job is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what they had to do. She had to read pray to Allah and be like a nun, for example, that she had to be praying to Allah all the time. But within this cell, Allah was providing food for her. And what kind of food? that other people weren't getting around her, but she was getting food from Allah directly. So Allah was subhanahu wa ta'ala was looking after all of her needs. And then he provides Zakaria alayhi salam with a child. That's another miracle, because this boy, Yahya alayhi salam, who is born, he's going to be a companion to her son, right? So subhanallah, this, even before the story of Isa alayhi salam starts, there's so many miracles and blessings. So now we start with the birth of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam. So Sayyidina Maryam alayhi salam was chosen and purified by Allah. This is mentioned in the Quran, as we mentioned. She would remain engaged in ibadah. She would not leave her room without necessity. She worshipped Allah only. So Zakaria alayhi salam and the custodians of Al-Masjid al-Aqsa were very happy with her devotion, purity, and piety. So she was growing up into this environment of purity, because she wasn't exposed to the outdoor world. Her job all day was just to worship Allah. So once Maryam alayhi salam went to the eastern part of Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, suddenly the archangel Gabriel appeared before her in human form. Now, Sayyidina Maryam alayhi salam, being a noble, pure, and pious woman, became worried and scared on seeing a stranger. She said, I seek protection of Allah from you. Fear Allah and stay away from me. The angel Jibreel explained, I am an angel sent by Allah to give you good news of a pure and pious son. She replied in amazement, how will I have a son when no man has ever touched me? The angel replied, it will happen. It is easy for Allah. He creates whatever He wills. When He decides to create something, He merely says be, and it becomes as He desires. He will grant you a son in a miraculous way, so that he can become a sign for people, by which they will recognize the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His title will be Masih, and his name Isa, Jesus. He will be honored in this world and in the hereafter. He will be from amongst those who are righteous and nearest to Allah. He will speak to people while still a baby in the cradle. Allah will teach him the book, give him wisdom, and will make him a messenger to the children of Israel. So we can see here what happens, and you've probably heard this story before. This is about the miraculous birth of Maryam alayhi salam. Now, all three religions believe in the miraculous birth of Isa alayhi salam. And it's miraculous because Isa alayhi salam did not have a father. So Maryam alayhi salam, his mother, she is a teenager at this time, and in the tafsir is written that she's between 12 and 14 years old, 14, 15 years old, and she goes out and she goes out into the hammam area. This is where the people used to wash, and she is standing on one side and she's alone when suddenly a man appears, and she becomes very scared, right? It says eastern part of the Masjid al-Aqsa, so this is where she is, and suddenly what she can see is a stranger, a person, and so she puts her hand out and she says, don't come near me, I indicating that she was a pure person. And it was really Jibreel alayhi salam who had come. It was the angel, but she doesn't know that. So she says, I seek protection from Allah from you. Fear Allah and stay away from me. So she invokes the protection of Allah and she says, stay away from me. Then the angel explains from afar that I am an angel sent by Allah to give you good news of a pure and pious son. So she replies and says, how can I have a son when I'm not married? No man has touched me. So the angel replies, it will happen. And it is easy for Allah. He creates whatever He wills. And then He tells her the plan. And this is the plan, that Allah just has to say be, and it becomes, right? And then He will grant you a son in a miraculous way. so that he will become a sign for the people. And all these are words from the Quran. This is how the angel explains it to Maryam alayhi salam. And he says that that child will become a sign from Allah to the people, so they can see the power of Allah. And he tells her the name too, that his title will be Masihullah, and which means the Messiah of Allah, and his name will be Isa, Jesus. So there's a title which is Masihullah, and there is a name which is, his name is Isa, or Jesus. He will be honored in the world and in the hereafter. He will be from amongst those who are righteous and nearest to Allah. So these are the qualities of Isa alayhi salam, and Jibreel alayhi salam is telling Maryam alayhi salam this. He's introducing her to her son. Right? You can see it's a lengthy speech. So basically it's an introduction for her son who's going to come. And then he says he will speak to people while still a baby. So this is a miracle that he's going to come with. So he consoles her that this child you're going to have, you might be thinking, if you think ahead, how scary this might be for you, but this child is going to speak as a babe in the cradle. Allah will teach him the book and give him wisdom, and will make him a messenger to the children of Israel. So then he tells him that this child will actually be a prophet, because the indication that he's going to get a book and he's going to have wisdom and he's going to be a messenger. So he's telling her that this is a very sacred child that you're going to have, and you shouldn't be afraid. So Allah had chosen Maryam alayhi salam for a great miracle. Allah wanted to show mankind that he could create a child without a father, just as he created Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam without a father or a mother. Sayyidina Maryam alayhi salam became pregnant and was now expecting a baby as Allah had willed. However, she became extremely worried. She would say to herself, what will the people say once they find out about the child? The days passed and the time to deliver the child came. She left her home and traveled to Bethlehem. There she felt the first pains of childbirth. Knowing that the time of delivering the child had arrived, Sayyidah Maryam alayhi salam sat under a date tree and leaned against its trunk. Exhausted, worried, hungry, and in pain, she said, I wish I had died before all this and had become forgotten. So Maryam alayhi salam conceives the child, right? Jibreel alayhi salam blows the soul into Maryam alayhi salam, and she becomes pregnant with the baby, and then when she begins to feel the pain, feel the movement, and she starts to perceive the child, and she sees that her days are passing, she leaves her home and travels to a place called Bethlehem, Bethlehem, which is still there in Palestine, Jerusalem. And then when she feels the first pains of childbirth, she goes and sits under a date palm and leans against its trunk. So she goes far away from the people because she doesn't know what to do. And now she's exhausted and worried and hungry and in pain. And she says, I wish I had died before all this and had become forgotten. So you can imagine her grief, where the thing she's worrying about, she's wishing for, is death. Now there's two levels here. One is because she's thinking about the future and the stigma that will be attached to her and to her child, she's wishing for death. And then generally, for all women who, when they are in the pangs of birth, it is said that they go through death and then they are reborn when the child is born, because the pain is so great. So she is in this pain, and she's wondering what she should do. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that time sends Jibreel alayhi salam, and he comes and he calls from a distance and he says, "O Maryam, do not worry. Your Lord has created a spring of water beneath you. Gently shake the trunk of the date tree, and fresh ripe dates will fall. Eat the dates and drink the water and cool your eyes by seeing the miraculous child." This brought comfort to the helpless Maryam alayhi salam, and she became overjoyed by the birth of Isa alayhi salam. So at that time, imagine she's under the trunk of this tree alone and scared and in tremendous pain. And Allah sends Jibreel salam to console her. So He gives her these words, He gives her this message. And He says, don't worry, Allah's created a spring of water underneath you. So there's water beneath you. If you dig a little bit, the water will come up. You can have the water. And where you're sitting right now, there are fresh ripe dates. They will fall down and you can eat those dates. So eat and drink and cool your eyes by seeing the miraculous child. And this brought tremendous comfort to Maryam alayhi salam, because Allah was speaking to her and she knew that this message had come from Allah. So whatever pain and whatever worries and struggles she was going through, everything was eased by this message. And this was a miracle for her. The greatest worry of Sayyidina Maryam alayhi salam was how to face the people. Though they were all aware of her purity and piety, how would she remove their bad thoughts? However, Allah helped her once again. When she decided to return to her people, the angel Jibreel advised her, saying, if people ask you about the child, then stay silent and let them know that you have kept a fast for Allah and cannot speak to anyone today. In those days, a person who fasted had to stay away from eating, drinking, and talking. So when Maryam alayhi salam returned with her newborn child to Masjid al-Aqsa, the people were surprised and shocked. They asked, "O Maryam, what have you done? Your father was not an evil man, and your mother was not a bad woman. They were both very pious, and no one in your family has ever committed such a big mistake. From where did you get this child?" Following the instruction of Jibreel alayhi salam, Maryam did not answer. Instead, she just pointed to the small child. Surprised, the people said, "Don't be silly, Maryam. How can we speak to a child who is still a baby in the cradle?" However, to their amazement, they heard the child say, "I am the servant of Allah. He has decided to give me the book and make me a prophet. He has made me blessed wherever I may be. He has ordered me to perform salah and give zakah as long as I am alive. He has made me kind to my mother and has not made me arrogant nor unfortunate. May the peace of Allah be on me on the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I will be resurrected." The people were amazed and astonished on hearing these precious words from a baby in the cradle. They accepted the miraculous birth of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam as the sign of the power of Allah. They now had great thoughts about Maryam alayhi salam and treated her with great respect and honor. So when Maryam alayhi salam has the child, she has to go back to her people. She has to go back to her home and face the people. And this was her biggest worry, because she was wondering if they would even let her into the town. What would her people do to her? What would they say? And what about her parents' reputation, who are both dead now? So when she returns to her people, the angel Jibreel comes and tells her that when you meet the people, say to them that you are fasting. And in those days, if you fasted, you couldn't talk as well. So when she goes, she just points to the child. When people came and they say, "What is this, Maryam? Your mother and your father, they weren't bad people. They were very pious people. You have come from such a good family. What is this that you've bought now?" So following the instruction of Jibreel alayhi salam, she points to the child, and they say, "What? The child's going to talk now?" And to their amazement, the child starts talking. And look at the message that the child gives. And Isa alayhi salam is one of 4 miraculous children who spoke in childhood. So he says, "I am the servant of Allah. He has decided to give me the book and make me a prophet." So first he says that I am a servant of Allah. Now these are his first words that he says, and this is from the Quran, right? This is a verse from the Quran. So he says, "I am a servant of Allah." Now this should dispel any later things that are going to come about him, anything that people are going to attribute to him after his death, when they make him, Naudhu Billah, the son of Allah, and they even take him to being the God. So the first words he says is, I am the servant of Allah. He has decided to give me the book and make me a prophet. So he says that I am a servant, and because he got a book, he's also a Rasul and he's a Nabi. Right? So he is a Nabi, a Rasul, and he's getting a book. Then he says, he has made me blessed wherever I may be. He has ordered me to perform salah and give zakah as long as I am alive. So another miracle of Isa alayhi salam, which Allah had made special to him, is that he was very blessed. Wherever he went, he took his blessings with him. And he says that Allah has ordered me to perform salah and give zakah. So he had to pray to Allah. This was his job on earth. Basically, he's saying that I have to pray salah and give charity. And he has made me kind to my mother and not made me arrogant nor unfortunate. Now look at this. This is also something that is special to Isa alayhi salam. He says he's made me kind to my mother. So he was very kind and gentle to his mother, and has not made me arrogant nor unfortunate. And we know from the stories of Isa alayhi salam that he was a very humble person, a very simple and humble person, and he was a very fortunate person. Then he says, may the peace of Allah be on me on the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I will be resurrected. So he's talking about his life. And think about this. This is a baby who's talking. So he's saying that may the peace of Allah be on me on the day I was born, the day I die, and the day I will be resurrected. So he's giving a prediction for his own life, where he's saying that he's going to be resurrected again. The people were amazed and astonished on hearing these precious words from a baby. And so they accept the miraculous birth of Isa alayhi salam as a sign of the power of Allah. So he is a sign of Allah, Kalimatullah. He is the sign and the power of Allah. They now had good thoughts about Maryam alayhi salam and treated her with great respect and honor. So look how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought her back to her people, and he not only brought her back, but he brought her back with so much honor, and the baby and the child were given honor in society, and they were able to live amongst their own people with respect. And the people knew that this child was very special and that he was going to grow up to be a prophet, subhanallah. So just to recap, we've learned today that about the birth, immaculate birth. Now the Christians use this word, that the immaculate conception of Jesus, which is correct, which means that it's a miraculous birth of Isa alayhi salam. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent him, and he was born in this way to be a sign from Allah. Right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is sending his sign that he can do anything. He doesn't have to do it in his predictable way, that there has to be a mother and a father. Just like Adam alayhi salam was born without a mother and a father, right? And so Isa alayhi salam is being born without a father. And Allah can do anything. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for these people, for the Christians, as they later became known, this was their miracle, the biggest miracle, that Isa alayhi salam was born without a father. It was their biggest miracle, but then it also became their biggest downfall. Because what was their biggest miracle? They were deluded by that, and there were people, the shaitan led them astray into believing that he was God. So they respected him so much that they went over the boundaries, and instead of looking at him as a prophet, they related him to Allah, Naudhu Billah, and made him the son of God. And then even to, as they believe in Trinity, Trinity means three, where they believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. So the Father, Naudhu Billah, they believe as Allah, who's in the heavens, and the Son as in Isa alayhi salam, who came to earth, God on earth. So they believe in him as a God too. And then the Holy Ghost, that's Jibreel alayhi salam. And then it gets really confusing, because then if you say that Jesus is God on earth and God got killed, so where did God go? So this whole Trinity concept gets confusing when you get into the debates. However, we Right now we're looking at the how Isa alayhi salam was born into the world, and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala performed so many miracles even before he came into the world, and at the time of his birth and after his birth. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we learn from this story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do anything, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can do anything, and he shows us these miracles, and these stories have come down to us in their perfect forms because they're mentioned in the Quran. Everything we've done today, these details are from the Quran. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows us these things because he wants to impress on us that he has all the power. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. So when we are today, what we are surrounded by Christmas lights and this and that and people celebrating, we should not be deluded by that, but we should continue to do our dhikr, and we should make dua for the people that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala open their eyes and give them true guidance as well to see who Isa alayhi salam really is. Isa alayhi salam is a prophet of Allah. So inshallah we'll continue this story next week, and um, stay safe wherever you are and follow the guidelines. A lot of people are getting sick, and so many people are dying too. Let's make dua for all of them, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us and preserve us and make us grow in our iman and make us aware of all the lessons that he wants us to learn in this time. So we make dua for all of that. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen wa ma alayna illa al balag. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.